She wants to text you. She checks your name. She types the message and deletes it, not because she doesn't care, because her ego is fighting her attraction. When no contact begins, most men assume silence means indifference. They think if she hasn't reached out, she must have moved on. But that's not how human psychology works. Silence doesn't mean the feelings are gone. It means there's an internal conflict happening. And most of it has nothing to do with a lack of desire. It has everything to do with pride, attraction, and ego rarely move in the same direction. Attraction pulls her toward you emotionally. Ego pulls her away to protect her image. If she was the one who created distance, if she acted cold, if she said she needed space, texting you first feels like admitting she was wrong. It feels like surrendering control, and surrendering control is uncomfortable. So what does she do instead? She checks your social media, she wonders what you're doing, she replays old conversations, she feels curiosity building, but texting first would expose vulnerability. It would mean risking rejection, and even strong women hesitate when pride is involved. Here's what most men don't understand: when you break no contact too early, you rescue her ego. The tension disappears. She doesn't have to confront her feelings because you made it easy. You reached out, you validated her position, you restored her emotional safety without her having to take a risk. But when you stay silent, calm, grounded, not posting emotional quotes, not trying to send hidden messages, something shifts. Now the ego doesn't feel comfortable anymore. Now the silence feels heavier because the longer you don't reach out, the more she has to face the possibility that you're not waiting. And that's when attraction intensifies. The mind fills silence with stories. Is he moving on? Is he seeing someone else? Why hasn't he texted? Does he not care anymore? That uncertainty creates emotion pressure, and pressure reveals desire. The more she feels that she might lose access to you, the louder attraction becomes. But her ego still resists. It whispers, don't text him. Let him text you. Because texting first feels like losing leverage. This is why emotional strength during no contact is everything. If your silence is fake, if you're secretly counting days and hoping she cracks, your energy will feel off when she returns. But if your silence is genuine, if you've redirected your focus to your mission, your health, your growth, your purpose, then your energy changes. You're no longer waiting. You're living. And that's what unsettles the ego, because now she's not dealing with a man trying to win her back. She's dealing with a man who may not need her at all. And when attraction collides with the fear of losing someone strong, pride slowly weakens. She can't text you first, not because she doesn't want to, but because her ego hasn't lost the battle yet. Stay silent long enough and desire will speak louder than pride. When no contact starts, there's something most men completely misunderstand. They think the silence is just distance. They think it's over. But what's really happening beneath the surface is a test of emotional strength, not a planned manipulative test, but a natural one. She's waiting to see if you break first. When you've been the one initiating most of the conversations, planning most of the dates, reaching out after arguments, you unknowingly train the dynamic. She gets used to you leaning forward. So when things go quiet, part of her assumes it's temporary. She assumes eventually you'll send the hey, you'll check in, you'll reopen the door. And if you do, you confirm the old pattern. The moment you break no contact too early, you communicate something powerful without realizing it. You couldn't handle the silence. You needed relief. You needed reassurance. And even if she responds warmly, the subconscious dynamic stays the same. She leans back. You lean forward. Attraction remains uneven. But when you don't break, that's when things start to shift. Silence creates tension. And tension reveals who is emotionally stronger. At first, she might feel comfortable. She might think, he'll text soon. A few days pass, then more days pass. Now curiosity starts creeping in. Why hasn't he reached out? Is he upset? Is he moving on? Is he actually okay without me? The longer you stay silent with composure, the more her assumptions begin to crack. Because here's the truth: many women expect men to fold under emotional pressure. They've seen it before, they've experienced it before. Men who say they'll give space but can't last a week. Men who claim strength but crumble in uncertainty. So when you remain steady, not cold, not reactive, just focused and grounded, you separate yourself from that pattern. Your silence starts looking different. It no longer looks like pain, it looks like control. And control is attractive. When she senses that you're not scrambling to reconnect, she begins questioning her position in your life. Before, she may have felt secure knowing you were emotionally invested at a higher level. Now she feels the balance shift. She feels the possibility that you're not chasing anymore. And that possibility creates emotional discomfort. Discomfort leads to action. But here's the key: this only works if your silence is real. If you're secretly watching her stories every hour, asking mutual friends about her, or posting things just to trigger her reaction, you're still emotionally invested in the same way. She may not see it directly, but the energy won't change when contact resumes. True strength during no contact means you've accepted uncertainty. You're not waiting for her message to feel whole. You're not counting days like it's a competition. You're genuinely rebuilding your focus, gym, goals, business, friendships, peace. That's when the dynamic flips. Because now she isn't testing whether you'll break. She's wondering if she misjudged your value. She's wondering if you're stronger than she thought. She's wondering if she underestimated you. And when a woman starts questioning her assumptions about your strength, attraction begins rebuilding itself. The one who holds emotional composure the longest controls the direction of the connection. And sometimes the strongest move you can make is simply not making one. When you were the one initiating most of the contact, most of the effort, most of the emotional reassurance, there was an invisible advantage. She held emotional leverage. She knew where you stood. She knew you were invested. She knew that if tension happened, you would likely be the one to fix it. That position creates comfort for her, but it also creates imbalance. Emotional leverage is subtle. It's not something people talk about openly. It's felt when one person is clearly more eager, more reactive, more available, the other naturally leans back. Not always intentionally, it just happens. And the one leaning back feels safer because they're not risking as much. Now, when no contact begins and you stop reaching out, that leverage starts slipping away. If she texts first, she risks shifting the balance. She risks exposing that she's thinking about you. She risks showing that your absence affects her. And that vulnerability feels dangerous when she's used to being the one who is pursued. It's not that she doesn't want to message you. It's that messaging you first means giving up the emotional high ground she once had. So she hesitates. She might open your chat. She might type something simple like, hey, or how have you been? But then she pauses because sending that message changes the dynamic. It signals interest, it signals effort, and effort feels risky when you're unsure of the other person's position. This is why emotional composure is so powerful. The moment you stopped chasing, you removed her certainty. Before, she knew you would lean forward. Now she doesn't know, and uncertainty makes leverage unstable. She can't rely on the old pattern anymore. But here's where most men sabotage themselves. They feel the silence and assume they're losing, so they reach out to regain connection. In doing that, they hand the leverage right back. They confirm that her silence had power over them. They show that they were waiting. True strength during no contact means being comfortable with that imbalance correcting itself naturally. You don't rush to fix it. You don't try to prove anything. You allow the absence to speak. An absence, when backed by self respect, is loud. The longer you remain steady, the more she feels that the control she once had isn't guaranteed. She begins to question whether you're still as emotionally invested. She wonders if someone else is capturing your attention. She feels the subtle loss of influence, and that's when attraction can resurface, not because you forced it, but because she feels the dynamic shifting. Women are deeply sensitive to emotional positioning. When a man doesn't need to assert dominance, doesn't beg for validation, and doesn't compete for attention, it signals quiet strength. It signals options, it signals confidence, and confidence without the need to prove itself is magnetic. If she texts first, it means she accepted the risk. It means attraction outweighed pride. But even before she sends anything, the internal battle is happening because the leverage she once felt is no longer secure. The moment you stop needing to chase is the moment the power begins to rebalance. And power that is balanced creates attraction that feels real, not forced. Silence does something powerful to the human mind. When communication is constant, there's no room for imagination, there's no mystery. Everything is known, predictable, available. But the moment you remove yourself from that constant access, the mind begins to fill in the gaps. And those they amplify curiosity. No contact isn't about punishment, it's about space, and space forces reflection. When you were texting every day, checking in, reacting to her stories, keeping the line open at all times, there was no uncertainty about your presence. She knew where you stood. She knew she could reach you. She knew your attention was there. But when that stops, when your name no longer pops up on her phone, something subtle begins to happen. At first, it feels normal. Then it feels noticeable. She might scroll through her phone and realize you haven't appeared in days. She might open social media and see you active, but not engaging with her. That's when curiosity starts growing. Not because you're playing games, but because human psychology is wired to question absence. Silence creates questions. Is he moving on? Is he talking to someone else? Why hasn't he reached out? Does he not care anymore? And the mind hates unanswered questions. It wants closure. It wants reassurance. When you were constantly available, there was no emotion tension. Now there is. And tension fuels attraction in ways comfort never can. Most men underestimate the power of mystery. They think showing constant interest secures connection, but constant availability often lowers perceived value. When something is always accessible, it feels abundant, and abundance without effort reduces urgency. Scarcity, on the other hand, increases focus. When she doesn't know what you're doing, when she can't predict your next move, when she feels the shift in your energy, her imagination starts working overtime. She begins creating scenarios in her mind. And here's the important part: imagination is often more powerful than reality. The stories she creates about you moving forward, growing, possibly meeting someone new, those stories create emotional spikes. Those spikes lead to desire. But this only works if your silence is calm. If you're posting indirect messages, trying to trigger jealousy, or obviously fishing for reactions, the mystery disappears. Real curiosity comes from genuine absence, from emotional steadiness, from you focusing on your life without broadcasting it for attention. The strongest form of attraction is when someone wonders about you more than they know about you. When she doesn't have constant updates, she has space to miss you. When she doesn't hear from you daily, she has space to feel your absence. And absence, when handled with confidence, speaks louder than presence ever could. Silence amplifies curiosity because it removes certainty. And when certainty fades, desire has room to grow. Sometimes the most powerful message you can send is no message at all. Before she ever reaches out, before she ever sent that first text, there's something she needs to feel internally: emotional certainty. Not certainty about you chasing her, not certainty about you waiting, certainty about safety, emotional safety. Because texting first, especially after distance or no contact, feels like stepping into vulnerability. When a woman considers reaching out, her mind runs through silent questions. What if he ignores me? What if he's cold? What if he's moved on? What if I look weak? These questions aren't about lack of interest. They're about self protection. No one likes feeling exposed, and sending that first message can feel like lowering a shield. This is where most men sabotage the process. They assume silence means she doesn't care, so they break first. They try to control the outcome, but by doing that, they remove the very thing she needed to feel your emotional stability. If she senses that you're restless, that you're posting for attention, that you're trying to signal messages indirectly, she doesn't feel certainty. She feels tension in a negative way. She feels that if she reaches out, she might step into drama, resentment, or emotional chaos, and no one moves toward emotional chaos voluntarily. But when your silence feels grounded, calm, and natural, something changes. She begins to feel safer. Not safe because you're chasing safe, because you're steady. There's a difference. Steadiness communicates maturity. It says, I'm okay. I'm focused. I'm not spiraling. That energy lowers her defensive walls. Emotional certainty grows when she senses you're not reactive. If she believes that texting you will lead to pressure, interrogation, or emotional unloading, she delays it. But if she believes that texting you will lead to calm conversation, light energy, and strength, she becomes more comfortable initiating. Attraction alone isn't enough. Desire alone isn't enough. Safety must exist alongside it. This is why outcome independence matters so much. When you genuinely detach from needing a specific result, your energy softens but remains powerful. You're not waiting to win. You're not strategizing every move. You're simply living, and that authenticity is felt. Women are incredibly intuitive when it comes to emotional atmosphere. She can sense whether you're centered or unsettled. If you're centered, she feels less risk. If you're unsettled, she feels uncertainty in a negative way. The paradox is this: the less you need her to text you, the more likely she is to feel comfortable doing it. When she knows that your life hasn't paused, that your confidence hasn't cracked, and that your identity doesn't depend on her response, she relaxes internally. And when she relaxes, pride weakens. Fear weakens. The desire to reconnect becomes stronger than the fear of looking vulnerable. Reaching out first becomes less about surrender and more about curiosity, less about losing power and more about following attraction. Emotional certainty isn't something you demand, it's something you demonstrate through your composure. And the calmer you become, the safer she feels stepping forward. At the core of all of this, beneath the ego, beneath the pride, beneath the hesitation to text first, there's one deeper truth. She needs to feel your strength. Not physical strength, not loud dominance, emotional strength, the kind that doesn't beg, doesn't panic, doesn't chase, and doesn't collapse under silence. When no contact begins, the real question isn't whether she misses you. It's whether she feels that you're still the same man or a stronger version of him. If your silence feels bitter, passive aggressive, or calculated, she senses weakness disguised as strategy. But if your silence feels calm, grounded, and purposeful, she senses growth. And growth is attractive. Women are drawn to men who are emotionally self sufficient. A man who can sit in uncertainty without reacting communicates something rare. He doesn't need external validation to feel whole. When she feels that you're okay without her, it creates a powerful emotional shift because now your attention is no longer guaranteed. It becomes something valuable again. Strength during no contact isn't about ignoring her to prove a point. It's about genuinely redirecting your focus. You pour energy into your fitness, into your career, into your mindset, into your social life, not to make her jealous, but because that's who you're becoming: a man on a mission, a man with direction. Direction is magnetic. When she senses that Your world is expanding instead of shrinking after her absence. It forces reflection. She begins to wonder if she underestimated you. She begins to question whether walking away created space for you to level up. And nothing triggers attraction more than realizing you might lose a strong man who isn't waiting. This is where pride starts losing its grip, because pride thrives when it feels superior. It thrives when it believes you're still emotionally stuck. But when she senses real independence, when she feels that your happiness isn't dependent on her message, something shifts internally. The dynamic becomes equal again. She doesn't want a man she can control. She wants a man she can respect. And respect grows from strength. If she texts first, it won't be because you pressured her. It won't be because you manipulated the situation. It will be because attraction overcame hesitation, because desire outweighed ego, because she felt that reaching out to a strong, composed man was worth the emotional risk. But here's the part most men miss: whether she texts or not, your strength remains the reward. Because true power isn't in getting the message, it's in becoming the man who doesn't need it. When you build that level of internal certainty, you win either way. If she reaches out, you respond from calm confidence. If she doesn't, you continue forward without resentment. Your life keeps moving, your standards stay intact, your energy stays high. And that's the ultimate shift, when your focus moves from will she text me to I'm building a life so strong that whoever enters it must meet my level. When she feels your strength, texting first stops being a loss of power and starts becoming a natural response to attraction. And strength, when it's real, never has to announce itself.